I received the divorce papers by email while still stationed in the desert, 13 years of marriage ending not with a conversation, not with a tearful goodbye or even a phone call, but in the cold, detached form of a PDF attachment that appeared in my inbox while I sat in a makeshift 10,000s of miles from home. My name is Lucas Carter, 42 years old, Staff Sergeant with the 101st Airborne, and I had been deployed in Kandahar for just over 4 months when Emily, the woman I had built a life with since my early 20s, decided she had finally grown tired of waiting. The subject line reading with a formality that almost made me laugh through the ache, "Let's be adults about this," and the body of the email containing no more than 3 clipped sentences informing me that she had already filed the paperwork, had already emptied our joint bank account, and had already moved her new boyfriend, a man named Ryan, into our home in Boise. I stared at the words until they blurred on the screen, my brain struggling to catch up with the fact that something I had fought for, sacrificed for, bled for in more ways than one, had been dismantled while I was in a war zone. I closed the laptop without saying a word to anyone, walked to the communal showers, let the lukewarm water run over my head like it might wash the news away, dressed for my shift, and carried on with my duties without a single mention of what I had just learned. Not because it didn't matter, God, it mattered more than anything, but because in that moment I knew instinctively there was nothing to be gained from speaking. Later that night, when I returned to my bunk, I opened my laptop again, typed a single word in reply, "Understood," and hit send. No arguments, no pleading, no rage in text form, just a flat acknowledgement. My bunkmate Torres, who had learned the art of reading people in silence, noticed the shift in my demeanor and, without looking up from his dog-eared paperback, asked if I was all right, to which I answered simply, "Just some stuff at home," and he nodded, leaving it there, because in the military you learn when to give a man his space when his world is tilting. The truth was, deep down, I wasn't even surprised, because 6 months before deployment I had already felt the fault lines forming. Small changes at first, like Emily no longer asking about my day, working late hours at the dental clinic where she was a receptionist, suddenly joining a gym 3 times a week yet showing no signs of workouts, buying new clothes and shoes with an energy she hadn't had for me in years, spending time with new friends whose names I never heard more than once, and setting new passwords on her phone. I never confronted her because I am not the kind of man who accuses without proof or rifles through someone's privacy, but I wasn't blind either, so I started quietly preparing, securing the essentials: birth certificate, marriage license, the deed to the house we bought under my VA loan that had only my name on the mortgage, inside a small storage unit on the other side of town, along with my grandfather's watch and my mother's old silver set, and opening a separate account at a different bank where I discreetly deposited part of my pay, not so much that she'd notice, but enough to make sure that if things went bad, I wouldn't be starting from zero. The night before deployment, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" with dry eyes and a voice that sounded like she was wishing safe travels to a coworker rather than seeing her husband off to a war zone. And I should have known then, but a part of me still wanted to believe I was wrong. What Emily didn't know was that I had built contingencies, and what she didn't understand was that I'm not a man who starts fights, but I am a man who will finish them. I first met her back in 2010 at a barbecue hosted by a mutual friend while I was on leave, staying with my buddy Chris in Boise, and though she was finishing nursing school at the time, she later took a lower stress administrative job at a dental practice, claiming it suited her better. We married within 8 months, bought a modest 3-bedroom home in 2014 in a quiet neighborhood, my name alone on the VA loan mortgage but hers added to the deed because that's what you do when you believe in building a life together. My father died a year after our wedding, collapsing from a heart attack while shoveling snow. My mother 3 years later from lung cancer despite never having smoked, leaving me a modest inheritance that allowed us to pay off our student loans and keep a cushion in the bank. During our marriage I deployed 4 times, twice to Iraq, twice to Afghanistan, and each time I came home she seemed a little more distant, a little more restless, as though she were inhabiting a life she'd outgrown, once telling me bluntly, "I didn't sign up to be a military wife." After I mentioned re-enlisting, her words edged with bitterness over the loneliness. By 2019, her discontent was almost tangible, her irritation when I called during girls' nights, her comment about her newly divorced friend living her best life, her musing out loud that she and I no longer had much in common. I suggested counseling, but she waved it off, saying it was just a phase. The late nights at work became the default, weekends away with friends I'd never met, and my gut told me a storm was building. And when you've served long enough, you learn to trust that instinct. 2 weeks after that cold divorce email, while I was sitting in the mess hall, my phone buzzed with a bank alert, another withdrawal, this time for $88,500, and when I checked, our joint account was down to $22.37, and the $47,000 in savings we had built over the years had vanished. I made calls from the base's phone center and learned she had been siphoning money for weeks, starting with small amounts and growing bolder, the largest transfers beginning the day after I deployed. That night, for the first time, I told Torres the truth, that she had emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into my home, and instead of offering pity, he asked the only question that mattered. "What's your plan?" It was like a switch flipped in my head. I logged into our home security system, something she probably forgot I had remote access to, and saw a strange truck in my driveway. A man I didn't know walking my dog, drinking from my Seahawks mug, wearing my sweatshirt, and Emily laughing. In the kitchen I had remodeled with my own hands. That was the moment my hurt turned into focus. I took out my phone and made a list call my army buddy Mark, now a lawyer. Check via loan terms. Contact my master sergeant about emergency leave. Review the refinance documents Emily had once mentioned. Verify the security of my pension accounts. By morning, I had emailed Mark with the subject line "Need legal help urgent." And after our call I had a strategy. I didn't need to fight with her in words. I needed to wait, watch, and set the trap. 2 months later I came back to the States without telling her, checked into a cheap motel under an alias, met with Mark in person, and learned she had forged my signature 3 months earlier to refinance the house, pulling $330,000 in equity and listing Ryan as co-applicant despite his criminal record, spending part of it immediately and stashing the rest. I took the paperwork to the bank, proved the forgery with my military ID and signature, and triggered a fraud investigation that froze the funds. Then came the next twist. Half the refinance money had been sent to someone named Daniel Kent, a real estate agent known for quick, under-market cash sales and who had worked with Ryan before, suggesting they were about to sell my home for a cut. Mark dug deeper and found this wasn't random. Ryan had a history of targeting women married to deployed servicemen, convincing them to sell their homes cheap, splitting the profit, and disappearing. The FBI, already tracking similar cases, brought me in, and I gave them everything: emails, bank records, security footage, even audio of Ryan and Kent inside my home discussing a $470,000 listing and a $420,000 cash offer, laughing that I was just another military guy who'd settle to make it go away. Within 30 minutes of that recording being shared, FBI agents surrounded the property, arresting both men for conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempted property theft. Emily arrived mid-raid, frozen on the lawn with her hands over her mouth, watching. As agents carried boxes of evidence out of my house, she claimed Ryan had told her I was hiding money from her, that she didn't know the full extent of his plans, but in the end she agreed to a settlement: full restitution, forfeiture of all claims to the house and my pension, and a signed confession to forgery in exchange for me not pressing additional charges. The federal case moved fast. Ryan got 8 years, Ken 12, and the FBI told me my cooperation had helped them break open a multi-state scheme targeting at least 11 other military families. -1 month after that first email in Kandahar, my divorce was finalized, and when Emily sent me a message saying she never meant for things to end this way, I didn't reply. A year later, I sold the house I could no longer stand to live in and bought a cabin outside Missoula, Montana, 2 bedrooms, 10 acres, a creek running behind it, and no neighbors in sight. I retired early from the Army. After 20 years, adopted a German Shepherd I named Ranger, and started doing carpentry for locals, enough to keep my hands busy while my pension covered the rest. Sometimes I would think about Emily, who Mark heard had moved to Oregon and taken another dental office job, and I realized I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't feel anything at all. One day a letter came from a Navy wife in Texas whose home had been saved because my case broke the FBI investigation, thanking me for fighting when it would have been easier to walk away. I pinned that letter to my fridge, and on quiet evenings when the memories came back, I would read it and remember that something good had come from all of it, that even in betrayal there can be a strange kind of victory, and that I had built something for myself that could never again be stolen, forged, or betrayed.